She was 24 years old, standing alone on a freezing Siberian mountain ridge, surrounded by nothing but white silence and the bodies of her friends. They had been laughing just hours before. She watched them collapse, one by one, choking, bleeding, screaming at things that weren't there, and she had no idea why. She ran barefoot through snow across rivers for hours without looking back. Her name was Valentina Utochenko, and what happened to her group on the slopes of Khamar-Daban in August 1993 remains one of the most terrifying, unexplained disasters in modern mountaineering history. Nobody knows what killed them, and the mountains have never answered. To understand the horror of that day, we must look at the world they left behind. It was the summer of 1993. The Soviet Union had just collapsed, leaving Russia in complete economic chaos and uncertainty. But for 6 young friends from Petropavlovsk, Kamchatsky, none of that mattered. They shared a burning passion for the wild, untamed corners of the world. They weren't amateur tourists. They were experienced, disciplined, and hardened by years of rigorous training. They had done this before, conquering paths that would break an ordinary person. The heart of this group was Lyudmila Korovina. She was a master instructor, a veteran hiker in her late 40s who possessed a legendary status. Korovina was known for her strict discipline, but also for her deep care for her students. She had guided dozens of expeditions through the brutal Siberian terrain. Her 5 companions, 3 young men and 2 young women, were the elite of her club, physically fit, highly capable, and fiercely loyal. They carried tents, heavy supplies, and meticulously plotted maps. They had checked and rechecked every piece of gear. They had done absolutely everything right. They had no idea they were walking directly towards something they would never understand. Their destination was the Khamar-Daban Range. This vast mountain chain stretches along the southern edge of Lake Baikal in Siberia. It is a place of hypnotic beauty, but also ancient, remote, and brutally unpredictable. Weather shifts like a weapon. Without a single moment of warning, storms can arrive like massive, sudden walls of total darkness. From a distance, it seems like paradise. Dense forest trails and crystal-clear rivers. But as you climb higher, passing the tree line above 2,000 meters, the environment changes completely. The trees disappear, replaced by bare, jagged rocks, freezing alpine tundra, and exposed ridges where there is nowhere to hide. Locals have always whispered that these mountains hold dark, old forces. In the summer of 1993, the range was about to add one more horror to its history. The expedition began on August 1st. Day 1 was perfect. The Siberian sun was bright, and the group moved with incredible synchronization. Korovina kept a strong, confident pace through the lower slopes. Spirits were high, and their laughter echoed through the valley. Day 2, still normal, a textbook execution of their plan. At night, they cooked warm food over a camp stove, sharing stories and jokes under the stars. They were exactly where they planned to be on their maps. Everything was going perfectly. Then, everything changed. On the 3rd day, the weather turned savage. A powerful storm swept across the exposed ridge. The temperatures dropped violently in a matter of minutes, plunging into near freezing levels. A mixture of snow and freezing rain lashed at them sideways, driven by winds so fierce they could barely stand upright. Visibility fell to absolutely nothing. This nightmarish weather was nowhere near the forecasts they had studied. Under normal circumstances, any regular group would have panicked. But Korovina had seen bad weather before. They were equipped. They were trained. They kept pushing forward, searching for the tree line where they could find shelter. But something about this specific storm felt different. It felt heavier, more suffocating. It wasn't just cold, it felt malicious, as if the very air around them was turning toxic. And then, without warning, one of the hikers stopped walking. The nightmare began with one of the youngest men, Alexander. He stumbled, falling heavily onto the wet rocks. His face was completely pale, eyes wide with confusion. His breathing became horribly ragged and panicked. It sounded like he was drowning, unable to get enough oxygen despite standing in the wide-open mountain air. Within minutes, he began to clear blood from his mouth. Before anyone could comprehend what was happening, the terror spread. Another group member began behaving strangely, staring blankly into the empty fog, screaming at things that weren't there, and tearing at their own clothes. They were completely unable to respond to simple questions. Korovina desperately tried to hold the group together, screaming commands through the howling wind. She had to make a choice. Push down the mountain through the blinding storm, or shelter right there on the deadly exposed plateau. She chose to move, to save her kids. But what happened next made no sense. One by one, they began to die. Within a terrifyingly short window of time, the plateau became a slaughterhouse. Healthy, athletic youth began collapsing entirely, gripping their throats. Some displayed signs of extreme internal hemorrhage. Blood poured from their eyes, noses, and mouths. They fell into violent seizures, thrashing against the frozen mud, screaming in agony. It was an absolute physical collapse, as if something invisible had violently attacked them from the inside out. Then the ultimate blow occurred. Korovina herself, the unbreakable leader, went down. She collapsed near Alexander, her body failing just like the others. 5 members of that elite group died on that cold mountain plateau. Experienced, healthy, well-prepared adults, gone within a few hours under conditions that absolutely should not have killed them. Valentina Utochenko stood in the center of this horror, watching her friends turn into bleeding corpses. The survival instinct took over her entire mind. She ran. Valentina ran for her life. She ran barefoot through the icy terrain for hours, completely disoriented and in deep psychological shock. She didn't feel the sharp rocks cutting her skin. She crossed freezing, rushing alpine rivers without thinking. Pure, raw survival instinct was driving every single step. For 4 agonizing days, she wandered alone through the dense Siberian wilderness, terrified that whatever killed her friends was hunting her. Finally, she reached a riverbank where a group of kayakers spotted her. She was barely conscious, severely dehydrated, and muttering incomprehensible words. When the rescue teams eventually took her statement, her testimony was fragmented, shattered by trauma. She could not explain the physics of what she had witnessed. She only knew that the mountain had consumed her friends. But when the rescue teams finally reached the campsite, the evidence they found told its own chilling story. When forensic experts arrived at the scene via helicopter, they expected to find a typical tragedy of hypothermia. What they actually saw left them deeply unsettled. The bodies were scattered across the plateau. Autopsies revealed something shocking. The primary cause of death was acute internal hemorrhaging. Their lungs had literally bled out internally, and their organs showed signs of rapid physiological failure. This was entirely inconsistent with regular hypothermia. Furthermore, their expensive equipment was completely intact. The tents were there, warm clothing was available, and food was abundant. There was absolutely no evidence of an animal attack. There was no avalanche debris. There was no obvious, logical cause for 5 people to experience sudden, simultaneous internal bleeding. The official Russian investigation reached no definitive conclusion. The case was abruptly closed. and the details were quietly buried beneath the heavy blanket of silence. Decades have passed, and yet the theories still multiply. The first is the hypothermia paradox. Extreme cold can trigger a sudden psychological breakdown known as paradoxical undressing. Victims feel a false sensation of burning heat, tear off their clothes, and run blindly. Could a rapid temperature drop have caused this? Perhaps, but it doesn't explain the violent internal bleeding found in the autopsies. Then comes the theory of toxic poisoning. Some researchers suggest that a sudden, concentrated pocket of toxic gas was released from the earth directly under their camp. This would explain why they couldn't breathe and why their lungs ruptured simultaneously. But we cannot ignore the darker angle: military experiments. The proximity of the range to restricted, secret Soviet military zones has never been fully addressed. Was an experimental gas tested in those mountains that day, carried by the storm winds directly into their path? Another fascinating theory is infrasound. Certain mountain wind configurations can produce low-frequency sound waves, completely inaudible to the human ear. It is scientifically proven that at high intensities, infrasound causes extreme panic, severe disorientation, and literal internal organ damage. Did the wind itself tear them apart? Or was it mass panic psychosis, where one person panics and the rest follow into madness? No single theory fully explains every piece of evidence. 6 people walked into those mysterious mountains together. Only one walked out. 5 experienced strong hikers died in ways that modern science still cannot fully rationalize. No external wounds, no visible threat, just sudden, overwhelming terror and immediate death. Valentina Utochenko survived the impossible. But even now, her mind refuses to fully relive the exact sequence of what happened on that lonely mountain ridge. Some believe it was just a tragic trick of nature. Others are convinced the group encountered a hidden poison, a rogue military test, or something anomalous that science still doesn't understand. But there is one haunting detail investigators could never erase from their minds. Why did multiple healthy human beings suddenly behave as if they were desperately fleeing from something completely invisible